In 1991, a retired school teacher named Ora Mae Williams stood at a single burner in her apartment in Memphis. Her husband had been gone for 2 years. Her kitchen was small. Her Social Security check was $387 a month, and every night she cooked supper in the same cast iron skillet her mother had given her in 1953. That skillet is the reason she never missed a meal. Number 12 cost her less than 80 cents. Number 4 used one ingredient most people threw in the trash. Number 19 was invented by a grandmother in the Delta who had not owned a pot in 40 years. These 25 skillet suppers kept black seniors fed and independent when the world stopped paying attention. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count down 25 cheap African-American one-skillet suppers for seniors living alone. Number 25, hot water cornbread and greens. This was the meal that started with a handful of cornmeal and ended with a full belly. You mix cornmeal with boiling water, a pinch of salt, and a little sugar if you had it. Then you drop spoonfuls into a hot skillet with oil and fry them golden and crisp on the outside, soft on the inside. While the cornbread drained, you wilted greens in the same skillet with vinegar and red pepper flakes. 10 minutes, 2 ingredients. In Alabama, black women had been making hot water cornbread for 100 years before Abby Fisher's cookbook documented it. A bag of cornmeal cost 39 cents in 1985. Turnip greens from the garden were free. For a senior living alone, this was supper when the cupboard was nearly bare. You did not need a recipe, you needed a skillet and a memory. Number 24, chicken fried rice. This was not the kind you ordered from a takeout window. This was the kind a grandmother in Oakland made on a Wednesday night with yesterday's rice and a chicken thigh that cost 35 cents. She diced the chicken, fried it until it browned, pushed it aside and scrambled an egg in the same pan. The cold rice went in. Next, tossed with soy sauce and whatever was in the crisper. Half an onion, a handful of frozen peas. 10 minutes and the skillet smelled like a restaurant but cost less than $1. During the 1970s, black families in Oakland, Chicago, and Detroit adopted fried rice from Chinese American restaurants in their neighborhoods. Yesterday's leftovers became tonight's supper. That was the whole point. Number 23, sardines and grits skillet. Most people under 40 have never eaten sardines on purpose. But for black seniors who grew up in the rural South, a can of sardines was a meal in itself. You cooked your grits in the skillet with water and salt until they thickened. Then you laid the sardines on top and added hot sauce. A can cost 25 cents in 1978. A pound of grits cost 35 cents and lasted 2 weeks. For a senior with arthritis who could not grip a knife or handle raw meat, this was the world's easiest hot supper. You opened a can, you stirred a skillet, you sat down and ate. A retired domestic worker in Greenville, South Carolina, ate sardines and grits 4 nights a week for 6 years after her husband's passing in 1982. She said the meal reminded her of her father, who ate the same thing every night after working the tobacco fields. Number 22, country fried steak with onion gravy. A cheap cut of round steak pounded thin with the back of a skillet until it was tender enough to chew without good teeth. Seasoned, dredged in flour, fried in cast iron until golden. Then the steak came out and the gravy went in. Flour into the drippings, milk added slowly, onions softened until they disappeared into the sauce. Everything went back in, covered, and simmered. In 1990, a pound of round steak cost $1.89 on sale. A senior could cut 2 portions and freeze the second for later. The gravy stretched the meat, the onions stretched the gravy, and the whole meal, eaten with a slice of bread to soak up the drippings, cost less than $1. Black families in Texas and Oklahoma called this chicken fried steak without the chicken. It was Sunday night's quiet reward. Number 21, skillet beans and rice. Not the slow-cooked red beans of New Orleans that took all day. This was the fast version. A cup of rice, a can of kidney beans, a diced onion, and smoked sausage sliced into coins. Everything in one skillet with enough water to cook the rice. 20 minutes covered, and the rice absorbed the bean liquid and the smoky fat from the sausage. A can of beans cost 39 cents in 1988. The rice cost pennies. For a senior eating alone in Memphis or Birmingham, this was the meal that did not ask you to plan ahead. It met you where you were. That was the whole recipe. Number 20, fried okra and potatoes. In the deep South, okra grew in every backyard garden from June through October. You sliced it thin, diced the potato, and fried them together in cast iron with bacon grease until the okra turned crisp and the potatoes turned golden. A dusting of cornmeal kept the okra from getting slimy. That was it. The roots of okra traced directly to West Africa, where the plant had been cultivated for centuries before it crossed the Atlantic. For a senior with a garden, this meal was free. A pound of okra cost 49 cents in 1986 at the store. The bacon grease was saved from breakfast, sitting in the coffee can beside the stove. A retired nurse in Montgomery made fried okra and potatoes every Tuesday from May through September for 15 years. She said, "Summer had a taste. This was it." Number 19, egg and tomato skillet. This was the meal a Delta grandmother made when there was almost nothing left. A can of tomatoes poured into a hot skillet with onion and a pinch of sugar to cut the acid. When it started bubbling, she cracked 2 eggs right into the sauce and covered the skillet until the whites set. You scooped it onto toast or a hoe cake. A can of tomatoes cost 29 cents in 1980. Eggs cost 59 cents a dozen. The whole meal cost less than 15 cents. In the rural Black South, nobody called it anything fancy. They called it eggs and tomatoes. A retired cotton gin worker in Clarksdale made this 3 mornings a week and twice for supper. She said breakfast food for dinner was not laziness, it was freedom. You cooked what you wanted when the house was yours alone. Number 18, smothered turkey wings. Turkey wings were the cheapest part of the bird, often less than 69 cents a pound. A senior would season them heavy with garlic powder, onion powder, salt, and pepper. Brown them in a skillet until the skin crisped. Then pull them out, make a roux in the drippings with flour and butter, add water and onions, and put the wings back in. Covered and simmered for 90 minutes, the meat turned tender and the gravy turned thick and dark. Served over white rice, this tasted like it cost 10 times what it did. A retired postal worker in Jackson, Mississippi, named Thelma Reese, made smothered turkey wings every other Wednesday for 11 years after her husband died in 1979. She had one cast iron skillet her mother-in-law had given her in 1955. That skillet had cooked the wedding supper. It had fried fish for every church picnic. And now it fed one woman eating alone at a table that used to seat 8. Thelma did not cook because she was hungry. She cooked because the act of standing at her stove was the one thing nobody could take from her. The skillet was not just a pan. It was the last piece of her marriage that still worked every day. For a generation of Black women who spent their lives cooking for others, the hardest meal to make was the one for themselves alone. The turkey wings were cheap, the rice was cheap, but the dignity of sitting down to a proper supper in a quiet kitchen, that was worth more than everything in the grocery store combined. Number 17, fried catfish with skillet. Cornbread, a catfish fillet dusted in seasoned cornmeal and fried in cast iron until the crust crackled. When the fish came out, you poured cornbread batter right into the same skillet with the drippings still hot. The cornbread baked on the stovetop, covered, soaking up every trace of catfish flavor. In the Delta, this was Friday night. A pound of catfish cost $1.29 in 1992. A retired bus driver named Clarence Hayes in Greenville ate this every Friday for 9 years. He caught the catfish himself from an oxbow lake. He said the skillet remembered his wife's seasoning. He said cornbread tasted better in her pan than in any new one. That was not superstition. That was 60 years of a woman's cooking baked into the iron. Number 16, skillet candied yams. Sweet potatoes were the cheapest vegetable in the southern grocery store for most of the century. You peeled and sliced them, laid them in a skillet with the butter, brown sugar, water, and cinnamon. Covered on low for 30 minutes, the yams softened and the sugar turned into a thick golden glaze. No oven, no baking dish to wash. A pound cost 19 cents in 1985. For a senior who missed holiday cooking, skillet candied yams brought Thanksgiving to a Tuesday night. A retired seamstress in Selma made them every week because her late husband had loved them. She set his place at the table when she ate them. Some meals are not about feeding yourself. They are about remembering the person you used to feed. Number 15, corned beef hash, a can of corned beef, 2 potatoes, an onion. That was the shopping list. You diced the potatoes and onion, fried them until they browned, crumbled in the corned beef, and pressed everything flat. The bottom crisped golden, while the inside stayed soft. A fried egg on top turned it into a meal that stuck with you until morning. During World War II, corned beef was a military ration that crossed into black households nationwide. By the 1970s, a can cost 49 cents and became a pantry staple for seniors who needed protein that did not spoil. A retired factory worker in Gary, Indiana, made corned beef hash every Saturday for 12 years after moving north during the migration. He said the meal traveled with him the way a hymn travels. You did not need to write it down. Your hands remembered. Number 14, tomato and rice skillet, a can of tomatoes, a cup of rice, an onion, a little bacon grease. That was the recipe 1,000 black grandmothers made on the nights between paydays. You sauteed the onion, added tomatoes and rice with enough water to cook the grain, and covered it for 20 minutes. The rice turned red. In the Gullah Geechee communities, this was called red rice, and it traced a direct line back to West African jollof. A retired shrimper in Beaufort made red rice 3 nights a week for 10 years. His skillet had been in the family for 4 generations. His great-grandmother cooked rice in the same pan when she was enslaved on a low-country plantation. The pan outlived the plantation. The recipe outlived the people who tried to own the people who made it. Number 13, skillet greens with smoked neck. Collard greens did not always need a big pot and 4 hours. A senior could strip the leaves, roll them tight, and slice them into ribbons. A smoked turkey neck went into the skillet first with water until the meat loosened. Then the greens went in, pressed down, covered, and steamed for 20 minutes. A bunch of collards cost 50 cents in 1990. A neck cost 39 cents. The meal fed a senior for 2 days. In the Black Belt of Alabama, greens were more than food. They were culture. Tuskegee University research found greens were among the most eaten vegetables for older black adults in the region. A retired teacher in Tuskegee made skillet greens every Monday because her mother had made greens on Mondays and her mother's mother before that. The recipe changed. The day never did. Number 12, fried chicken wings in gravy. A package of wings cost 49 cents a pound in 1988. That was the cheapest meat in the store. A senior seasoned the wings, dredged them in flour, and fried them until dark golden. Then the wings came out and the gravy went in. Flour into the drippings, water added slowly. The wings went back in, covered, simmered for 15 minutes. Served over rice, $1's worth of wings became 3 meals. Church mothers in Memphis knew this recipe the way they knew the hymns. They brought it to shut-ins on Sundays in aluminum pans with foil pressed tight. For a senior eating alone, that pan meant someone was thinking about you. The gravy poured slow over rice tasted like proof. Number 11, skillet mac and cheese. This was not the baked version with 3 cheeses and a breadcrumb topping. This was the Tuesday night version a grandmother made when the oven felt like too much effort. Elbow macaroni boiled in the skillet with just enough water to cook the pasta. When the water was gone, you stirred in butter, milk, and as much sharp cheddar as you could afford, grated straight into the pan. The cheese melted and the milk thickened into a sauce that clung to every noodle. James Hemings, an enslaved man trained as a chef in France, is credited with introducing macaroni and cheese to American tables. 200 years later, a box of elbows cost 39 cents and store-brand cheddar cost 99 cents. For a senior living alone, skillet mac and cheese was the fastest path from an empty stomach to a warm one. It did not require a recipe. It did not require measuring. It only required a skillet, cheese, and the willingness to sit down and eat. That sounds simple. For a person eating alone in a quiet kitchen, sitting down was the hardest part. The cooking was easy, the silence was not. A retired bus driver in Detroit ate the whole skillet every Thursday for 7 years. He said washing one pan was better than washing a pan and a plate. He was not being lazy, he was being honest. When you cook for one, every dish you wash reminds you there's only one setting at the table. Skillet mac and cheese understood that. It met a man where he was. It asked nothing except that he pick up a fork. That was enough. Number 10, dirty rice. In Louisiana, dirty rice got its name from the chopped chicken livers and gizzards that gave white rice a speckled appearance. A senior sauteed the livers and gizzards in a skillet with onion, celery, and green pepper. Then the rice went in with broth and simmered covered for 20 minutes. The livers gave it depth. The gizzards gave it texture. The vegetables gave it Louisiana's holy trinity. A pound of chicken livers cost 29 cents in 1982. For a senior concerned about anemia, this was medicine disguised as supper. Doctors now recommend iron-rich foods, but Louisiana's grandmothers had been prescribing dirty rice for generations without knowing the science. A retired longshoreman in Baton Rouge made dirty rice every Sunday because his late wife had made it every Sunday. He used her skillet and her recipe card stained with grease. The stains were the best part. They meant she had touched that card 1,000 times. Number 9, liver and onions divided people into those who loved it and those who could not stand the thought, but seniors who appreciated it found one of the most nutritious and affordable meals available. Chicken or beef liver was soaked briefly in milk to mellow its flavor, then dredged in seasoned flour and pan-fried alongside heaps of sliced onions that caramelized into sweet, soft ribbons. The liver cooked quickly, staying tender inside while developing a savory crust. Rich in iron and B vitamins, liver provided nutrients that aging bodies often lacked. The cost was remarkably low. Liver remained one of the cheapest proteins at the butcher counter because so few people bought it anymore. For seniors willing to embrace this old-fashioned dish, liver and onions delivered both nutrition and nostalgia in generous portions. Number 8, smothered cabbage with sausage. 1 head of cabbage, 1 link of smoked sausage. The sausage went into the skillet first, sliced into thick rounds, browned until the fat rendered. Then the cabbage went in on top with a splash of water, Covered on low for 45 minutes, the cabbage turned silky and soaked up every drop of smoky flavor. A head of cabbage cost 30 cents in 1987. A sausage link cost 50 cents. For a senior with stiff hands, there was almost no knife work. You could tear the cabbage with your fingers. A retired church deacon in Little Rock made smothered cabbage every Tuesday for 8 years. He had never cooked before his wife's death in 1984. A woman from his congregation taught him 3 skillet meals. This was the one he never tired of. He said learning to feed himself at 72 was the second hardest thing he ever did. The first was learning to eat alone. Number 7, fried pork chops were the centerpiece of countless soul food suppers, requiring only a few ingredients but delivering deep satisfaction. Thin-cut chops were seasoned with salt, pepper, and garlic powder, dredged in seasoned flour, then fried in a skillet until golden brown and crispy outside while staying juicy within. The rendered fat left in the pan became the base for gravy, stretching the meal even further. For seniors, pork chops were economical. A package contained several chops at a price far below beef, and the cooking was straightforward. The smell of pork frying brought back memories of family suppers and Sunday dinners. Served with rice and gravy, greens, or simply with bread, fried pork chops proved that simple cooking, done well, created meals worth remembering. Number 6, fried bologna and eggs. This was the meal nobody bragged about, but everybody knew. A slice of thick-cut bologna, scored so it would not curl, fried in a hot skillet until the edges crisped. Then eggs cracked into the same pan, fried in the rendered fat. White bread for sopping. That was supper. A pound of bologna cost 69 cents in 1984. A dozen eggs cost 79 cents. A senior could eat this 3 nights running for less than $1. A retired sanitation worker in Nashville ate it 4 times a week for 5 years. His daughter asked why he did not cook something better. He said nothing tasted better at 10 at night than something hot from a skillet that took 3 minutes. The simplicity was the point. A meal that required no effort was a meal that got made. A meal that got made was the difference between eating and not. Number 5, fried corn was summer captured in a skillet, though frozen corn made it possible any time of year. Fresh or frozen kernels were cooked in bacon drippings or butter with onion until they caramelized slightly, developing sweetness and depth. Some cooks added a splash of milk or cream near the end, creating a sauce that clung to each kernel. Salt, pepper, and sometimes a pinch of sugar balanced the flavors. The dish came together quickly, 15 minutes from start to finish, making it ideal for seniors who tired easily but craved something homemade. A bag of frozen corn cost little and provided several servings. Fried corn could stand alone as simple supper with cornbread or accompany other dishes as a beloved side, connecting those who ate it to generations of Southern tables. Number 4, salmon croquettes. A can of pink salmon cost 89 cents in 1990. That single can became 6 golden croquettes that fed a senior for 2 meals. You drained the salmon, mashed it with a fork, mixed it with a cracker, a beaten egg, and diced onion, shaped them into patties, and fried them in a hot skillet until crisp and brown. The calcium in the soft bones was something most people never thought about, but doctors now recommend canned salmon for seniors concerned about bone density. Your grandmother did not know the science. She just knew it was cheap and held together in the pan. Salmon croquettes were Friday night in Black households across the South. Tipton Martin's research showed how Black cooks adapted the recipe using whatever binders they had, from stale bread to leftover mashed potatoes. A retired housekeeper in Mobile made salmon croquettes every Friday from 1972 until 2001. 29 years, the same skillet, the same table. She said Friday had a shape, and it was round and golden, and it smelled like her kitchen. Number 3, skillet cornbread and buttermilk. This was not a side dish. This was supper. You poured batter into a scorching hot cast iron skillet greased with bacon drippings. The batter sizzled the moment it hit the iron. 15 minutes with the lid, and the cornbread rose golden with a crust that crackled when you broke it. You crumbled it into a glass of cold buttermilk and ate it with a spoon. That was the entire meal. Cornbread and buttermilk was what your great-grandmother ate when there was nothing else. It was what sharecroppers ate after 16 hours in the fields. It was what black seniors ate on the last nights of the month when the check had run its course. A box of cornmeal cost 29 cents. A quart of buttermilk cost 45 cents. A retired minister in Macon ate cornbread and buttermilk every night for the last 3 years of his life. His grandson asked why. He said his mother made it, his grandmother made it, her mother made it. The meal was older than him. He was right. Number 2, smothered potatoes and eggs. This was the Depression era breakfast that became supper in 1,000 black kitchens. Potatoes diced small, fried in a skillet with onion until golden, then eggs cracked right on top. The skillet covered, everything steamed until the eggs set. Hot sauce, toast, that was it. In 1935, a dozen eggs cost 18 cents. Potatoes cost even less. A retired Pullman porter in Chicago ate potatoes and eggs 3 nights a week from 1959 to 1973. He had moved north during the Great Migration and brought the recipe from Greenwood, Mississippi. He said it was his mother's only meal when the harvest failed. It was a meal born from nothing, made in a skillet too old to sell. But the eggs were warm, the potatoes were golden, and a man sitting alone on the south side of Chicago could close his eyes and taste Mississippi. That was not just memory, that was survival. Your mother's cooking is the last thing poverty can take from you. Number 1, hoe cakes with potlikker. A hoe cake is the oldest meal on this list. Cornmeal mixed with water, a pinch of salt, fried on a hot skillet until the edge is crisp and the center stays soft. The name comes from the field hoes that enslaved black Americans used as griddles when no other surface was available. In 1881, Abby Fisher, a formerly enslaved woman from South Carolina, published one of the first African-American cookbooks and included her hoe cake recipe. 140 years later, black seniors in the rural South were still making them the same way. You fried the hoe cakes 2 or 3 at a time and ate them with potlikker, the broth left behind after cooking greens. The liquor was rich with vitamins that had leached from the collards during hours of simmering. You sopped the hoe cakes in it the way you would sop bread and soup. A bag of cornmeal cost 39 cents. The potlikker was free, a byproduct of another meal already paid for. A retired midwife in Eufaula, Alabama, named Pearl Owens, made hoe cakes and potlikker every Thursday from 1967 until 1998. 31 years. She said the hoe cake was the first food she ever learned to make, standing on a chair in her grandmother's kitchen at 7 years old, watching batter bubble in the same skillet she still used at 83. Generation after generation of women had held that handle. Pearl said when she gripped the iron, she could feel every hand that came before hers. She said the skillet remembered, and she said any senior who thinks a meal made alone does not count as real. Supper has forgotten what food is for. Food is for keeping you here. A hoe cake and a cup of potlikker, eaten alone at a table set for one, is as real as any feast. It is the meal that slavery could not kill. It is the meal that poverty could not erase. It is the meal that loneliness cannot ruin. It costs almost nothing. Salmon croquettes were the one supper she could throw together between walking in the door, and the 6 o'clock news signing off. A can of pink salmon, bones mashed right in for calcium because nothing left that bowl, mixed with a beaten egg, crushed saltines, diced onion, and a spoonful of yellow mustard, then shaped into patties and laid into a skillet of hot oil that popped the moment they hit. The trick was the leftover cold mashed potato she sometimes folded in as the binder when crackers ran short. A Depression-era substitution that black home cooks carried north through the Great Migration and never bothered to explain to anyone who didn't already know. She flipped them once, just once, and the side was always creamed English peas from a can, warmed in the same skillet after the croquettes came out. The whole thing was on the table in 12 minutes. You could follow every step exactly and still produce something that tasted almost right, but never quite right, because the missing ingredient wasn't in the recipe. It was in the hands that made it. Stewed tomatoes over white rice sounds too simple to be a supper, and in a lot of 1960s households, it showed up when the week had gone tight, but that framing misses what she actually did to it. The tomatoes went into a saucepan with a generous spoon of butter and a pinch of sugar, the move nobody outside these kitchens knew about. The sugar cut the acid without making it sweet, and the butter rounded out the sharpness of the can. She let it reduce for 15 or 20 minutes until it thickened into something closer to a sauce. The rice was already done. She plated first and ladled the tomatoes over the top. Hot, enough that steam rose off the bowl. 3 ingredients, less than 15 minutes. Everything came down to 2 small details she never wrote down, and neither did anyone else. Smothered cube steak was the weeknight miracle that made a cheap, tenderized cut taste like something a family had worked all day to deserve. She dusted each piece in season of flour, salt, black pepper, garlic powder pressed in by hand, then laid them into hot oil and didn't touch them until the crust was set, because flipping too early was how you lost the bark she'd spent years getting right. Once browned, she built the gravy in the same skillet, scorched flour bits lifted with water, onion rings laid down flat, everything simmered dark and glossy. The steaks went back in, covered low heat, 30 minutes until they cut with the side of a fork. Cube steak, mechanically tenderized, top round, was sold in black neighborhoods at a fraction of sirloin's price. The gravy did the work the price couldn't. She made this on Wednesdays, always Wednesdays, and the smell met you at the front door before you touched the knob. Nobody makes it on Wednesdays anymore. Nobody makes it at all. There was a kind of supper that didn't announce itself. No single dish you could point to, just 2 things cooking side by side that together made a meal. Hot water cornbread, rounds pressed by hand from cornmeal, salt, and boiling water, laid into a cast iron skillet in a slick of hot grease and fried until they developed a crust you could tap with your finger. On the other eye of the stove, a pot of field peas with a smoked ham hock, cooked until the peas went soft and the broth turned silky. Together they were supper. The cornbread was for sopping. The field peas were for filling. She made it without measuring the cornmeal or timing the peas, because the hands knew the proportions and the eyes knew when the peas were done. The last time that supper appeared on this earth with all its authority was the last time those hands were in that kitchen. Smothered chicken and rice was the supper that could silence a table full of hungry people in 30 seconds. She'd cut the chicken herself, seasoned every surface hard with salt, black pepper, garlic powder, and paprika, dredged each piece in flour, and set it in hot lard until the skin turned a deep, crackling gold. When the chicken came out, every brown bit and rendered drop of fat stayed in the skillet. Sliced onions went in, stirred and scraped until they softened and picked up all that color from the bottom of the pan. Water went in next, the flour from the dredging thickening it as it simmered. And then the chicken went back in with the lid on low for 45 minutes until the meat had pulled from the bone and the gravy had gone deep brown and rich. Over long grain white rice, it was a supper that cost almost nothing and tasted like it cost everything. The last person who made it exactly right has been gone a long time. That gravy has never been quite the same since, no matter how many times someone tries. Crackling bread is what happened when the hog rendering was done and cracklings were left over. Those curled, salty bits of fried pork skin that came out of the log pot. She folded them straight into the cornbread batter, and what came out was something no plain cornbread could touch. Pork fat worked into every bite, the cracklings making pockets of salt and crunch. The technique traces to the era when hog killing in late fall was a community event. Neighbors working together, nothing wasted, cracklings going directly into that evening's bread. By the 1960s, most urban households had moved past home lard rendering, but cracklings were still sold in paper bags at southern markets, and grandmothers who'd come north on the Great Migration kept the recipe because they knew what plain cornbread was missing. What it was missing was this: the last people who made it right are mostly gone. The loss is not a small one. Sardines and hot rice was the supper that fed a family when the week had nothing left. A flat tin of sardines in tomato sauce, not oil, always tomato sauce, because the sauce was part of the dish, stirred directly into just cooked white rice with diced onion and a shake of hot sauce, heated 3 minutes until the fish broke apart into the grains. Done before the rice cooled. Canned sardines cost almost nothing, required no refrigeration, and delivered more protein per penny than nearly any other item on the grocery shelf, which is exactly why this Great Depression staple followed Black families north through the Great Migration without losing a step. Some households added a sliced hard-boiled egg on top. She added pepper and a prayer of thanks and called it ready. The kids ate every grain. Before any of that meat hit the pan, there were the nights when the week had stretched thin and the pantry was down to the basics. Liver and onions with skillet gravy was the supper African-American mothers in the 1960s either loved to cook or simply had to, because beef liver was among the cheapest cuts at any butcher through that decade, sometimes less than 20 cents a pound. The trick was in the onions, and the trick was time. Sliced thin, they went into lard or bacon grease over medium-low and stayed there for 20 minutes until they turned the color of old honey and gone completely soft and sweet. The liver came next, sliced a half-inch thick, dusted in flour and salt, 3 minutes aside, no more, because overcooked liver turns grainy and bitter and forfeits everything. She knew this without being told. The pan got deglazed with a little water, the onions stirred back in, the gravy dark and thick. It divided the table every time. The people who grew up eating it still crave it. Everyone else missed out and never knew it. Pinto beans with salt pork over white rice was the Monday supper. The wash day meal, set on the back of the stove before laundry started and left to simmer all morning. She rinsed the dried pintos the night before and soaked them in cold water until morning. The salt pork went in early, that cured, fatty slab that cost almost nothing and gave the pot everything. Low heat did the rest, breaking the beans down into a thick, creamy broth that absorbed every bit of the pork smoke by the time supper came around. Pinto beans followed Black families north during the Great Migration, arriving in Chicago, Detroit, and Cleveland kitchens as a comfort that needed no adjustment for the new address. The rice went underneath, plain and white, and the beans went over, and that was enough. You ate until the bowl was clean. She is gone now. Nobody starts the beans the night before anymore. But before beans were the last thing standing, potted chicken with rice meant bone-in chicken pieces, thighs and drumsticks, never breast, because breast meat goes dry and she didn't raise anyone who wasted money on dry chicken. Seasoned with salt, pepper, garlic powder, and paprika, browned in a little oil until the skin went gold, then set aside while diced onion and bell pepper softened in the same pot. The rice went in dry, stirred once in the drippings to coat every grain, then the chicken went back on top, and just enough water or broth poured over to cover. The lid went on, the heat dropped. 8 minutes in, and the kitchen smelled like Sunday. She learned this method from her own mother, who had learned it in a kitchen where measuring cups didn't exist, and the only instruction was to watch until it looked right. Nobody in that house asked what was for supper twice. That pot answered every question before you finished asking it. Fried pork chops with pan drippings, gravy was built entirely on technique, and the technique lived in her hands. Blade-cut chops, the thin, bony ones that cost next to nothing, got seasoned hard, pressed into flour until coated white, then laid into hot lard with a sharp cracking hiss that meant the temperature was right. She'd cook them through until the crust was deep brown, then set them aside on a plate. Every bit of brown flour, rendered fat, and caramelized seasoning stuck to that cast iron was the foundation of what came next. Cold water went in, not broth, just water, and she'd work the bottom with a wooden spoon until everything loosened and rose up into the liquid, the heat pulling it all into a gravy that thickened on its own with no roux, no extra flour, just what the chops had left behind. If you had to ask how much water, you weren't ready to make it. She is gone now. That specific ratio of drippings to water, the one that made it taste like nothing else, left with her, and it has not come back. Salmon croquettes turned a 15-cent can into something that smelled like real cooking. She drained the pink salmon, bones and all, mashing them in because those soft bones weren't going to waste, then folded in diced onion, cracker meal, a beaten egg, and black pepper until it held its shape in her palms. Cast iron hot, each patty dropped in with that flat hiss that meant the temperature was right. You didn't need a thermometer, you knew the sound. In the 1960s, a 14-ounce can of pink salmon cost less than a quarter at corner stores on Chicago's South Side and Detroit's Black Bottom, and it fed 4 people without anyone leaving hungry. The simplest question about this dish today, how do you keep them from falling apart, tells you exactly who learned it by watching and who didn't. Franks and beans was a Tuesday night staple that nobody put on a menu but everybody ate. A package of frankfurters sliced on the diagonal, dropped into a pot of navy beans that had soaked overnight or come out of a can if the week was rough, seasoned with onion, ketchup, mustard, and enough black pepper to make it mean something. The whole thing bubbled together in one pot for 10 minutes while cornbread crisped in the skillet alongside. It wasn't restaurant food, it wasn't church food, it was Monday's paycheck stretched to cover Thursday's table, and in African-American urban households from Chicago's South Side to Harlem's tenements, this combination fed families through the 1950s and 60s without requiring a single apology. You ate it fast and you ate it quiet. Second helpings were not guaranteed. Folding crushed crackers into canned salmon by feel, pulling pork chop drippings into gravy with nothing but cold water and a spoon, stretching one bell pepper across 5 plates. She knew what she was doing, and none of it got written down. Here are 30 easy suppers 60s black moms made without a recipe. Salmon patties showed up at least once a week in most African American households through the 1960s, and the way she made them had nothing to do with the recipe card. A tall can of pink salmon got emptied into a bowl, bones included. The liquid drained, but set aside to pour over rice later. Crackers went in next, not breadcrumbs, crushed between her palms, right over the bowl, along with a beaten egg, diced onion, a spoon of mustard, black pepper, and salt. The mix got shaped into thick rounds and pressed firm so they'd hold together in the grease. Cast iron got hot, not warm, hot, before the first patty went in. You could hear the difference between a skillet that was ready and one that wasn't. She knew by the sound. They fried golden and crackling on the outside, tender all the way through. Nobody who grew up eating them can explain what she did differently. They just know nobody else gets it right. Tomato gravy over rice was what happened on the nights when the money was thinner than the pot. A can of whole tomatoes crushed by hand, she never used a knife for that, dropped into bacon drippings with diced onion and a pinch of sugar to cut the acid, simmered until the tomatoes broke down into something thick and brick red and alive with fat. Spooned over a mound of white rice, done in 15 minutes, filling the plate like something that had taken all afternoon. What the rest of the country didn't understand was that this dish had roots older than anyone in that kitchen. Stewed tomatoes and rice traveled a direct line back to West African jollof traditions carried by enslaved people into the Gula Geechee coastal kitchens of South Carolina and Georgia and spread inland with every generation that moved. She never called it jollof, she called it supper. The taste was the same. Here's my challenge to you. Pick one of these meals, just one. The salmon croquettes, the skillet cornbread, and buttermilk. Make it this week. Then sit down at the table, not the couch. Set a place, use a real plate, eat it slow, pour yourself something to drink, and take your time with it. Because these meals were never just about being cheap. They were never about making do with less. They were about a generation of Black men and women who refused to stop feeding themselves when the kitchen went quiet and the table got smaller. They were about the decision made every single night to stand at a stove and cook something instead of giving up and going to bed hungry. That decision is not small. That decision is everything. Share which one you're going to make in the comments. I want to know if anyone else's grandmother had a skillet that remembered. Because these are not just recipes. They are proof that the simplest food cooked in one skillet, eaten alone, can still be an act of dignity. The cast iron holds the memory. Your hands do the rest.